Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Founded in 2008 and headquartered in California, Alcor Solutions is a global cloud advisory and implementation services company serving clients in multiple geographies including North America, Europe, Japan, and India. Our consultants provide advice to leading businesses on cloud platforms, architecture, enterprise service management, and integrating IT service delivery. Our clients include global Fortune 500 as well as leading organizations in multiple industry verticals. We partner with ServiceNow, Microsoft, Bomgar, Salesforce, FireEye, Dynatrace, and MuleSoft. Our ongoing webinar series is designed to inform, enlighten, and start discussions within your own organizations. If you require any additional information after listening to today's webinar, please reach out to us through our website, www.alcortech.com. Today's webinar is also on social media. You can follow, comment, and get regular updates for today's webinar with the hashtag AlcorWebinar. That's hashtag or number sign ALCORWEBINAR. We do have time reserved at the end of the webinar for Q&A, so please feel free to type any questions into the questions section. Today's webinar topic is Achieve the True Value of ITOM in Your Organization, Part 2, Automation, presented by Robert Mandelbaum. Robert is Alcor's Senior Manager, Technical Consulting, and has over 20 years of IT experience that includes physical plant, network engineering, NetWare, Microsoft, and Cisco. Robert's ITOM career began in 1998 when he joined IBM Tivoli. Since then, he has worked with both CA and BMC. Robert's customers have been in the automotive, banking, entertainment, and retail industries, as well as multiple levels of government agencies. He currently is responsible for Alcor's ITOM practice, which includes ServiceNow as well as a variety of other ITOM technologies. I will now turn the webinar over to Robert.
Thanks, Jeff. Quite an introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're at. Thanks for joining. And there's the slide I probably should have popped up while you were talking. You pretty much covered that. The only thing I would add to this is that everything we do, you'll notice strategy in all these different disciplines. Everything we do is from a process strategy point of view. So let's get on to the actual webinar. Alcor has expertise across all of the disciplines that ServiceNow offers. So I would encourage you, while today is about orchestration, any of the other products ServiceNow offers, we can help. Give us a call. We're talking about operations management, OM and ITOM there. Today we're focusing primarily on orchestration. So if you were online for my last webinar, we actually covered phase 1 and phase 2 of the ServiceNow maturity model. We talked about discovery, we talked about mapping, and then we talked about getting events into the CMDB that would display in the map and the benefit of doing that. We're actually going to backtrack just a hair today when we talk about automation and talk about the phase 1 and phase 2 briefly, so you can see how that ties into orchestration. We will have a separate cloud management webinar, but please keep in mind that most of the things you'll see today from a orchestration point of view also work in the cloud. It may be a little different slant on that, but we'll get into detail on that on the next one. So from a high level, what is ITOM? I like to explain it as the plumbing, everything that feeds in and out of your service management, business service management. So conceptually, if you've got ServiceNow implemented and you have ITSM implemented, this is the piece of your environment or the tools in your environment that would then feed into that and make that much more valuable and much more accurate. And we'll look at that. This is something I try to stress when I speak with customers, that There's no silver bullet. I'm not going to walk in and say, you know, if we implement all this software, all your problems are going to go away. It really takes three things to be successful. You need people. Your people know everything about your environment. Most of them are broken down into silos. You got to get those folks together in the same place and extract that data. Those folks also know about the processes that are in place. And at the end of the day, what we're doing with technology is automating those processes. And if you try to take something away from this, I'm going to use this as an example. I'm going to pull people out of this. You're just not going to be successful. So up-leveling a little bit, what is the promise or what is the value or what is the goal? However you want to look at, why do we want to do this? Why do we want to do ITOM? Well, at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do with all of this is increase service availability. Services is how your company makes money. We're trying to make sure that you can attain your service levels that you're being measured against to keep those services available. Most companies are built in silos. You have different database group and network group and server group and business app group A and B, however you're divided. And what you really need to be successful with ITOM is to break down those organizational barriers and work with management tools holistically across those barriers. And while you're doing this, you want to do it from a best practice point of view. Another piece of this is to think about what traditionally your IT department and most companies are looked at as a cost center. And what we're really trying to do by implementing enterprise management, operations management, service management, whichever term you want to use, this big picture of managing the environment, we're trying to drive the cost of IT down by automating certain things. And what this is going to do is then start helping you become part of the business, delivering value to the business, and hopefully get rid of that cost center perception and be contributing to the overall business. Before we get into the tools, I want you to keep in mind some different perspectives. Up at the top, at the business level, some of these things that might be on your CIO's mind. How do I grow my business? How do I increase operational efficiency? That's absolutely one of the things we're going to talk about. And reduce cost. How do I get a competitive edge utilizing these tools? How do I make sure my customers are happy? If I'm large and global, how do I leverage that to get a competitive advantage? And how do I adapt to change and stay agile to take advantage of new opportunities? Now, your IT director or CTO, while focused on the business, has a little different slant, but what you'll notice is these are really directly tied to what the business or the CIO is looking for, right? How do I change quickly to adapt to business needs? That's the CIO saying we have to be agile. How do I leverage that worldwide resources that we spoke about? How do I integrate and make all that work for me? How do I lower the cost of doing things because I'm being told my budget's shrinking? I still want to fund new initiatives with less, so now I'm trying to do more with less, and I'm trying to eke some money out of that to go be better. How do I keep things, how do I reduce complexity? How do I simplify what I'm dealing with? And then how do I find, secure, and maintain and keep happy highly skilled talent? So we're going to talk about tool sets, but keep in mind that there are higher level business drivers and the technical needs to match those business drivers, all these things we're going to talk about. So let's get going talking about orchestration. First of all, what is orchestration? I was looking for information to build this slide, and when you Google it, what you really end up with is a musical point of view. And if you think about what a conductor really does, making sure that all these instruments play in unison, that they play at the correct time, and that they play the correct thing. It's very much like what Wikipedia says from a technical point of view. right? We're doing automated arrangement and coordination and management of complex computer systems, middleware, and services. Let's break that down just a little bit. What we're really saying is we're creating an automated way to do one or more processes the same way every time, in a repeatable fashion, knowing the steps that are going to take place, when they're going to take place, and it's without mistakes. I know that when humans are involved, mistakes happen. Software doesn't make mistakes. It works or it doesn't. It's going to do it the same way every time. Abstraction from complexity. We're going to dig a little more into this, but it's the concept of building something, handing it down to somebody you're paying a little less for, and letting them do it. And if we do it in an automated fashion, I'm going to maintain standards, whether it's HIPAA, PCI, your corporate standards. We'll talk a little bit about this in compliance in a while. But at the end of the day, if you go back to the business, what are we trying to do? We're trying to earn money for the business by saving money from an IT perspective. So let's talk about that abstraction a little deeper. You can see from the graphic, what we've got is somebody at the top, an architect. So he would design a process, a workflow, a run book, depending on the terminology you want to use. And then he would hand that down, or she, to implementers that would actually go build it, configure it, test it, and then that can be handed down to even lower level operators, or this could just be level 1 help desk. So you're doing abstraction, you're doing delegation of authority. I don't have to have access physically to the systems to go affect change because the tools have the access. Now I'm controlling what they can and can't do. And again, it's repeatable. It's the same thing every time, and it's something where I can't mess it up. So we're going to run through some use cases. These are going to be very visual, and they're conceptual. Everything we're doing here is conceptual. We're not going to go clicking on buttons and seeing what thing pops up. This is to understand the value of orchestration, kind of how you use it in your environment. And if you like what you see and it gives you some ideas, I'm getting ahead to my last slide, but I would hope you'd give us a call and we can come in, sit down, do some consulting, figure out what business goals you're trying to achieve and help you get there. So let's go into some use cases. Automated remediation. Plainly speaking, we're going to use orchestration to fix things that are broken. So if you watched my last webinar, you saw this, and this is where I said we're going to backtrack a little. So we're going to pretend you understand what monitoring is. Most of you do. And in this example, we've got monitoring tools, but they're not integrated into event management, or it could be non-monitoring tools. It could be the phone rings. Depends how your organization is configured. But this is a very typical, I see this in some of the biggest companies in the world. It's kind of scary, actually. Very typical situation. So let's take a look. Something goes down in the environment. Alerts can be sent. They could be not sent. But at the end of the day, a business owner or somebody that needs to get the application calls to the help desk and says, I can't get to it. So right now what you have is an application that's down, not serving the business. That's costing money. You have people on the phone calling the help desk, probably sitting on hold because they're all calling at once, costing you money. So there's a lot of money being hemorrhaged at this point. What's the next step that takes place? A ticket gets opened, and that help desk goes and calls everybody and their brother that might have anything to do with what is wrong. Now these are a lot of expensive, highly paid people. They'll get in a room, or they'll get on the phone, or they'll get on a conference call, and then they start pointing fingers. My network is up. It's not my network. My database is up. It's not my database. This is really expensive. So let's look at a better way to deal with this. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So what are the problems with it? It's expensive. Your mean time to recovery is very low because instead of fixing things, you're spending time trying to figure out what it is and who's responsible for it. That may or may not fix anything. The fix, whatever it is, if it's human, it's not consistent. It could be different every time. SLAs are inaccurate. So what do I mean by that? In this scenario, that ticket got opened, say, 8 a.m. They spent a couple hours figuring out, or an hour or whatever, figuring out who is responsible for this. Then that person, if the Windows person, jumps in the car or runs across campus and fixes it. So say like it's fixed by 11 o'clock. Then they get another email or their phone rings, and you got to go to the other site because the server's down. They jump in the car and go to the other site and fix the server. And then their day pretty much progresses the same. They come back, they're exhausted. It's the end of the day. What do? They log in, and they start closing tickets. Now, if you're measuring an SLA against opening and closing that ticket as up and down of that service, it's extremely skewed, and you're not getting credit for when that application literally came up. And this cycle just goes on and on and on and on. So what we're going to do now is look at a better way to do this. Again, we're going to take for granted you understand what monitoring is. If you don't, call me. Happy to go through the last webinar's content with you. In this example, we've got monitoring tools across all of the elements in the environment, as well as you saw that dot moving around. That's a transactional monitoring tool. You heard the name Dynatrace mentioned. We're a Dynatrace partner. That's a typical thing of a Dynatrace or an App Dynamics or a CA Wiley. You know, insert your tool name here. That data now gets put into CMDB. It gets organized in a way that it gets seen in the map in ServiceNow, and you also get a high-level view of how your business services are being affected. So now I've got some idea of how I want to prioritize my resources and what's going on. So we're going to look at that. Monitoring is in place. Ticket gets opened automatically. Now here's where the big difference is. Because I've run through some rules, I didn't call anybody. I didn't call everybody. The software said, hey, I know this is a Windows problem, and they reached out and contacted through a page, through an email or something on your phone, however the alerting system is set up, the Windows person. Now they look at the problem and they have it in the ticket, and there's a knowledge base available to them, and they say, you know, I know what this problem is. In fact, I've automated this. I'm going to go ahead and run it with automation. The problem goes away, and it's trackable. So this is a big difference because I've now cut out that whole group of people. I cut out the name blame game. I've cut out the war room. I've gone straight to the root cause. And the fix is going to be the same. If I see it 5 times, 10 times, the consistency is there. I'm fixing it the same way. Now this is what I call my Nirvana slide. Understand, it takes a lot of work to get to this point. Very few people do. But I want you to kind of see the vision of what is possible if it's done and done correctly. So same scenario. An event comes in, or a group of events. They run through the rules engine. The ticket's automatically opened. And because this is all known, automations run, and it's fixed. There was no human intervention. Of course, all of this, tickets closed, but of course all of this is trackable. All of it can be reported on. You could send events saying, hey, I just fixed this. I know I'm noticing a pattern. You need to go do something about this, whatever the case may be. But this is what's possible if you were to take it all the way. We're going to save money. We're going to get the mean time to recovery way up. We know the results. It's going to be consistent every time, and your SLAs are accurate. Now I'm being measured by when the app actually went down, because the monitoring tools told me when it went down, and then what's called a clearing event went when it came back up. And now I have accurate data to say, no, it was only down for 20 minutes. It was only down for half an hour. So now my SLAs are being achieved and protected. I'm calling this dev lab orchestration, this example, this use case, but think it could be just bare metal install of systems in my environment. It could be test lab. It could be any time that you have to go lay down operating systems, applications, whatever the case may be. This is something that a lot of companies do all the time. So in this example, I've got some developers in their lab, and they want a lamp stack to develop on. So what do? They run over and they provision a VM. Now, give me a little leeway on these numbers. Some of you are faster than others. This is just so you get the concept of the example and the time savings and the money savings. After I've laid down the VM, I throw in an operating system. A couple hours there. That's actually being generous for those of us that have installed operating systems, and then went and got patches and gone through that process. Because it's a lamp stack, I'm installing Apache, say an hour. There's your database, another hour. There's your PHP, there's your lamp stack, another hour. That's a total of 6 hours. So the average person in a 6-hour worth of work a day, by the time they take lunch and their breaks, it's pretty much a whole day. So what's wrong with this process? Very expensive. Now I've got highly paid developers installing software, installing databases, installing all these pieces and parts, and they're not doing their job. So now not only am I paying them to do a job they shouldn't have to do, they're not doing their job. Lack of license control. What do I mean by that? People are just installing things. I have no tracking of where it went. I don't know how many I have. I could be over deployed. Audit could come in. I could be liable for a true up. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with this. Lack of build consistency. My background originally, I'm a server guy. That's how I started. And when I would build a server, I would build it my way, right? There's the core things that have to go in, but I would tweak the things I would tweak. Sometimes I would have a little disk with things that I would install, tools, that type of thing. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that's the way I did it. Now the next person, the next technician, probably does the same thing. It's going to be a little different. So now what I have is an environment where if I'm developing on these systems and they're not consistent, I could get inconsistent results across the applications I develop. It also makes troubleshooting a lot harder when I don't know exactly how that stack is built. And again, since I don't know where things are, it's really hard to go get things back. I'm sure you've all heard of VM sprawl. This is something that happens all the time. This is a great way to stop that from happening. So let's kind of take a look at what that costs to do it manually. Now, we're going to say 90K fully burdened is 44 bucks an hour. We already determined it takes 6 hours to build that system, that lamp stack. So you got 20 people in the lab. They do that twice a year, give or take holidays, say 25 times each. So how does that work with math? $44 an hour for 6 hours is 264 bucks. Times your 20 developers, 5,280 times their 25 builds, 132K is being spent in this example to build servers. And this doesn't take into consideration the money that you're not getting value out of from what they're not doing. They're not doing their job. They're not developing the next app. They're not testing what is going to be put in your environment. This is a very simple, this is something we used to call the back of the napkin ROI, something that if I was sitting down in a restaurant with you for lunch, you could say, well, why should I do this? Here it is. Let's look at a better way to do it. They want the lap stack. This time, they're going to go to the ServiceNow portal, service catalog, and say, I want a lamp stack. Now, the best part of this is, now that they've set it, they go back to work. They're back developing or testing or troubleshooting or whatever it is you're paying them to do. They're not building. Automation says, I know exactly what you need. I've been configured. Now it's the same every time. Like I said, your high-cost talent is doing their job. Build is the same. Now that it's automated, I know where all my licenses are. And now that I know where everything is, it's easy to get it back. Not over-deployed. I'm tracking everything. And of course, all of this is something you can build into reports and figure out what's going on in your environment. Now we're going to do what I'm calling a general service request. I just need something. This is a day-to-day task. I could have used password reset. That's a pretty common one. What I chose was asking for access to Salesforce. So you're imagine if you will, you're a software company, you got a couple new sales reps. You say everything you need to know about getting to your customers, all their contact information, everything's been uploaded from that last advertising campaign, and it's sitting in Salesforce. Go to work. So they say, great, okay, I've got to get access to Salesforce. So they call the help desk. The help desk opens a ticket. Maybe they sat on hold, maybe they didn't. They call the Salesforce admin, and being the smart admin that he or she is, they say, well, this is great, but I want to make sure that I know they're allowed to have access, because there's a lot of proprietary and sensitive customer data that are going to be exposed to. I want to get permission from their manager to do this. So I send the manager an email. And lo and behold, manager, in this example, is on vacation, forgot to set his out of office. Admin goes back to work, they're doing their thing. A day or two later, the sales folks are going, man, I'm not being productive here, and time is money. I got to figure out what's going on. So what do? They pick up the phone, they call the help desk. Help desk calls the admin and says, oh, that's right, I forgot. Let me go to their manager. Go to the manager. Manager approves it. They log in. They give them access. What's wrong with it? You're going to see a theme, obviously, through all these slides. It's time-consuming, way too many manual steps, very, very error-prone. And think if the SFDC admin had gone on vacation. Now you got two people gone. Nobody knows what's going on. So it's really hard to track. Your customer, the internal customer, your salespeople, they're upset. They've just lost time's money. And if you're being held to an SLA against that, pretty much impossible to achieve it. So let's look at a better way. Again, you log in. There it is. You request it. It's right there in the service catalog. Now it's automated. It automatically opens the ticket. It takes pretty much 0 time. We're going to be fair. We're going to go to the same person. And he's still on vacation. But here's the difference. You can set up rules that say, if it isn't approved in 2 hours, I want you to escalate it to the next person. Or you can create an approval group. And maybe since he didn't see it, his manager saw it at the same time and approved it. It automatically goes down to the admin. And he says, yep, I'm going to go ahead and do it. But instead of manually logging in and do it, I'm just going to go ahead and run this workflow, and it's going to do it. It's closed. It's fast, it's repeatable, it's trackable. You're reading the bullets as I'm saying them. They're happy. I got it fast. My SLAs are achieved, and it requires minimal approval time. It could just be a say yes to an email or check a box on an application, depending how you set it up. So it becomes a very quick, easy way to take people out of the process and automate it and have it work the way you want it every single time. We're going to take a look at compliance. I actually specifically know of some folks that do Blue Cross, Medicare, Medicaid. There, I named the company, didn't mean to. Medicare, Medicaid processing. 33% of their business is Medicare, Medicaid processing. So compliance is their lifeblood. This could be PCI compliance. This could be HIPAA compliance. This could just be corporate compliance. But let's look at it from a manual perspective. You take some smart people, and they have to run around or sit at a desk and run scans, and they have to gather a whole bunch of data. Then they have to go take that data and somehow compare it against what the known state or the acceptable configuration is. Now think about databases, networks, operating systems, firewalls, everything that's in your environment that has to be compliant. Think about the process that's involved here. And they say, oh, these 3 things are out. Now, that's the 3 things they knew about, that they scanned, that they saw. Then they go fix them. So it's extremely slow, absolutely mistake prone. You don't know what you've got. You don't know where it is. You don't know if you're missing things. And obviously it's extremely expensive from a manpower perspective. But think if you're not compliant and you get audited and you get fined or you can't operate, that's even more expensive. So this is critical to have it happen correctly every time. So let's look at how it looks when it's automated. Now, I grabbed this clock off the internet, so we're going to have to go with 9:25, somewhere it looks like a red box in the middle of the month. Or this could be every day, it could be every week, whenever you choose. I'm automatically going to go scan. And I'm going to compare that against a known set of rules. So I'm comparing against the HIPAA rules or the PCI rules or the DISA STIGs or whatever it is that I have to maintain compliance against. The system says these systems are out. All this data is tracked. It's configured to go against the CIs in your CMDB. So now you can understand if compliance is important to your company. You could have an event appear in your interfaces that look just like any other type of an event. So now you've got a common look and feel to how you actually deal with all these things. The best part of all of this is based on the rules, it's automatically put back the way it is supposed to be. Whether it's running scripts, whether it's pushing down a correct config, whether it's laying down a new VM and replacing the old one, however that works for that given device, it can be automated. And then of course, you can alert the people that own the businesses, the people in charge of compliance, your security team, however you want to use that. Again, repeatable at will. I can do it ad hoc, I can do it as a schedule. It's extremely accurate. There's no human intervention happening here. The machine is going out, it's scanning, it's comparing, it's saying here's what's in, here's what's out. So it's not accident prone. It's reliable, it happens every time the way you want it to happen. So where do we come in? Where does Alcor come in? Jeff said up front, we're a silver partner. We have deep process knowledge and practice in everything that we do. And our goal is to offer you the most complete IT operations tied to your IT service management solution possible. Because what you need to do is you need to get back to the business of providing those mission critical business services to your customers, whether they're internal, external, or both. And how do we do this? We leverage the ServiceNow platform, all these great things it gives you, the delegation of authority, the common data, the same look and feel so your learning curve is low. There's a huge list of things that this platform offers. And we do this by integrating your current investments in products. So I've just got names out here that are things that I know that a lot of customers have. So the value is to get this into that ServiceNow platform, and what it's going to do is not only leverage your current investment in your products, it's also going to leverage that investment you have in talent. You've spent a lot of money in product, you spent a lot of time and money getting people to be good with those products. So let's take all of that, tie it together, get it into your ServiceNow implementation, and if there's gaps, if there's products missing, what we'll do is we'll come up with a roadmap. Here's the way we think you should proceed. Here's the best way to get what you agree to are low-hanging fruit, small wins along the way, right? Because we want to take that IT department and fulfill the things that that CIO was looking from a business perspective, help you, the IT director and CTO, achieve the things that you're being asked to, and again, be seen as contributing to the business and not the cost center. So my call to action, I don't really like that word, what I'd like you to do is to call us, call me. Here's our contact information. I would love to come and sit down, go over what you have, talk about where you're going, come up with that workshop that I spoke about, that roadmap workshop, and see how we can help you be successful. I want to say thank you for joining me. I hope you learned something. I hope you found it interesting. And I look forward to speaking with you face-to-face. Thank you. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Robert. There are a few questions. We'll get to those in just a moment. As a reminder, please use the question section in the webinar tool to ask Robert a question on today's topic. So, Robert, you ready for some rapid-fire questions here?
Well, let it rip. We'll see how I do.
All right. So, number one, can I have more than one orchestration tool in my environment?
Yeah, you know, actually we see that quite often. What happens is the Microsoft group has System Center rolled into their CAL, right, their licensing agreement. So they say, we're going to use Microsoft Orchestrator. Then you've got your service desk folks saying, well, you know, my ServiceNow has orchestration as well. There is no reason you can't have multiple orchestration engines running an environment. You've already invested time and money and skills into the one. Let's integrate that. Let's pull that in. And you might even have the solution of having ServiceNow One talk to the Microsoft orchestration tool. It just depends on what works best for your environment. So absolutely, we see it all the time.
All right, cool. Where do I start? What do I automate first?
Well, I don't have an exact answer for that other than let us help you figure that out, right? Some things are more complex, they take longer. Some things are simpler. I think where the fastest return on investment from a automation orchestration perspective is password reset. That's probably one of the things I would recommend, allowing people to go in and say, I need to reset my password through the service catalog and have it happen. But it really just depends on the business, and I think that's where having a consulting firm like ourselves come in and work with you has benefit.
Okay, perfect. I have Microsoft Orchestrator. Does all of this apply?
So yeah, I think I kind of answered that with my first answer. So sure, why not? But I think the advantage of going with integrating that and or using the orchestrations from ServiceNow to drive it is all the accountability. It's all the delegation of authority. It's the common look and feel of the ServiceNow interface. So there are definitely advantages to, yes, using it, but at the same time integrating it.
Okay, and looks like the final question. I'm not sure I trust software to do the right thing. How do I make sure it does? That sounds like a monitoring the monitoring tool question.
Yeah. It's the age-old, how do I trust automation? What we recommend for most folks is to put an approval process, an automated approval process in place so that you know when something is going to happen. For instance, in the example, they were looking for Salesforce access, and it had to be approved first. So even if it's not approving for somebody else, maybe I want to, every time something is going to happen, I want to know it, and I want to say, yes, do it, or have the option to cancel it. So you can set up an approval process and add that step into the chain of events. And then eventually, if you get comfortable with it doing it on its own, you can pull that step out.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks very much, Robert. That'll be it for the webinar today. The recording of today's webinar will be available on our website, www.alcortech.com, and on our social networking sites. Thanks everyone for joining. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and we will see you at the next webinar.